friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And today I'm going to be making a fermented hot sauce from my own homegrown hot peppers. And here is the batch I made last week, and I've been trying not to use it so I could show at least some of it in the video. And I'm really happy with this. It tastes wonderful. It's been hard not to want to add it to my dinners and trying to reserve it until I can get this new batch made up so I can show you how I do it. I'll be trying something a little bit different than what I did here, even though I'm really happy with this. So I'll be talking about that when we get started. So let's get to it. All right, so right here I have some of my Chinese 5-color peppers, and so you can see there's all the different colors in there. They're just so beautiful. Now they turn red when they're, the red is the last color they turn. So if you've never tried these before, they actually start out as purple. So these ones are the youngest ones here, and then they go to this kind of in-between color of purple and cream, and they turn more cream, and then from there they start turning yellow. You can see this one was at the point of turning yellow, and then they get a darker yellow and a gold, and then they go to orange and a dark orange, and then red is the last color they turn. So this one here would be the oldest pepper on the plant. And I still have more out there, but and you can wait, if you're using these peppers, you can wait until they're all entirely red if you wanted to, but I do like how pretty these look in the bowl. And this is how the color turns out with all 5 of them. And then right here I have one jalapeno pepper that I allowed to turn mostly red. Now this is one of the peppers that I grew from the seed that I got from Ellen. So Ellen Fisher, thank you for that. I've been getting a few peppers. Some of them I've picked green, and some of them I've been waiting until they turn red. So I'll be adding this to my blend as well. It really doesn't matter which peppers you use, just whatever hot peppers that you're growing, where you can make a nice spicy sauce. And by the way, these little guys are pretty hot. They might look pretty and cute and innocent, but they're pretty spicy. I know they're not the hottest pepper out there, but they're spicy, that's for sure. Okay, so basically all I'm gonna do is cut the stems off, and then I'm just gonna, this is not a very sharp knife. There, I like this knife a lot better. That little paring knife is kind of lame. I think I need Patrick to sharpen it for me again. And then these small ones, I'll just make sure they don't have the stems on them, and then cut them in half. You can leave that little piece of stem on there if you want. I just don't want any tough pieces on there, but they're not going to hurt anything. Totally edible. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do this and get these all in here. I'll go ahead and speed this up or skip through it so that you don't have to watch my little process of cutting all these in half. Okay, so now I'm ready for the next step. Now, if you, like me, handled your peppers with bare hands, I recommend you go and scrub them real good with fingernail brush and hot water and soap, because the oils from those peppers will get into the skin of your fingers. It never bothers my hands, though I have years ago I was handling some jalapenos that were especially spicy, and I was doing a bunch of them because I was making jalapeno peppers by hand, and I'm scraping them seeds out with my thumbnail, and my hands, actually I thought they were gonna blister. They hurt so bad, the right hand in particular. So be careful with that. It is actually recommended you wear gloves. However, I haven't had any issues dealing with these. Just make sure you wash right away. So right here, according to this, I have, it looks like I have about 1.5 cups, almost 2 cups of peppers all chopped up in here. And so I'm not measuring out what I'm doing here. I'm just doing it by look and feel. So what I've got going on right here is my own homemade fermentation starter. Now my guess is you could use kombucha. Vinegar may even work, but the starter is going to be better than vinegar, because the starter is still bubbly and active, unlike the vinegar. Usually once you let your vinegar, it's done and it's fully vinegar, it's no longer active and alive like it is in the fermentation starter. So if you're interested in how to make one of these, I'll go ahead and put the link to this down below and in the iCard. And you can make it out of any fruit and pretty much any kind of sugar. Just don't go for a high mineral sugar, but something like a good organic blonde cane sugar is good, and honey is also good. Those are 2 really excellent choices for making a fermentation starter. So anyway, what I'm going to do with this, I've got this, my little thing here, and this is stainless steel, so I don't mind the ferment touching it. You know, I'm finally getting myself past that. The stainless steel is non-reactive, just like with the bentonite clay. It's not going to harm it or change it in any way. So I just use that to catch my fruit that's in my starter, and all I'm doing is making sure I get enough of the liquid in there to make it easy to blend the peppers. So you might not want to fully top them off. So right now the liquid is up to about here, which is, let's see where my measurement line is. It's not going to be this much, but I'm guessing there's probably about, looking at the jar, I might have put in about a half cup of the fermentation starter, which is actually more than you'd really need for starting it, but since I'm using the liquid anyway, it's not going to hurt anything, and it's going to add a little bit of sweetness. If you've got a starter that's made from ginger, you know, like what's called a ginger bug, that would be a really good option to use in that. But the reason I started making up my own homemade fermentation starters is because ginger is really expensive around here, and I have yet to be successful growing it. I need to try again though. So I'm going to put in about a half teaspoon. Now let's put a whole teaspoon of salt in there. I don't want to go more than that for what I've got in here. And then one of the things I wanted to try, and it was just a little bit of paprika, for just to add a little deeper color to it and a little more flavor. So I'm just putting a pinch. That is optional. Another option that I did not use in my last one, all I did in the last one was salt, fermentation starter, and peppers, and I really liked it. But I'm going to go ahead and throw in, did you hear that pop? That's because this is fermented garlic. And yes, I keep all my ferments in the refrigerator. I think for the most part, you can keep your fermented vegetables on a shelf. But one reason I don't like that is they'll keep fermenting, and they'll sometimes, if they, especially if they don't have a good seal, they can bubble over. If they have a good seal, they can build up a lot of pressure. So I prefer to keep them in the fridge to slow down that fermenting process. So I'm going to grab one of these fermented cloves of garlic and throw that in there. Oh, let's do 2. We like garlic, and garlic's really good for you. And that's just going to add a little more flavor to the sauce. So now that I've got all this in my blender, I'm going to go ahead and process this up on high. And if it looks like it's still not going to blend really well, I'll just keep adding my fermentation starter until I have enough liquid in there that it's going to blend up really nice to have a consistency like this. I do want it kind of runny. Now, if you'd like it thicker, I recommend, instead of putting fermented or fresh garlic in there, use some of your granulated garlic powder. That's going to help soak up some of the excess moisture. Or you can also add like cayenne pepper that's dried, some other kind of dried pepper. You can also make your sauce out of dried peppers to begin with. So anyway, let me get this blended up and we'll see how it turns out. Okay, whew, I took a taste of that. It's really hot. But here's the thing I've noticed is that once it's fermented, it sort of mellows out that real spiciness. If you like it really hot like this, then try to use it up right away or make smaller batches, or don't even ferment it. The pepper will actually keep it lasting for a long time. That's why you can have a hot pepper sauce in your refrigerator forever and it never spoils. Because if it's mostly pepper, the pepper is going to kill any bacterias that are going to actually cause it to spoil. So anyway, but if you want it a little bit more mild, fermenting it not only makes it even more healthy, it just mellows that out a little bit so it's not quite so hot. Now I'm going to go ahead, I just wanted to test the flavor. I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more paprika to this, maybe about another half teaspoon. Again, just for flavor and a little bit more color. And I'm going to add a little bit more salt. So probably about a 1/4 teaspoon there. Okay, that deepened the color a little bit. It's still going to be orange, and I'm okay with that. I don't really care that much about the color, but there's just something that's kind of pleasing to the eye about having a darker red sauce, but that's okay. Well, I like it, so do whatever you want. If you're using, like I said, with your Chinese hot peppers, if you let them all get completely red, then you're going to have a darker color sauce anyway. Now, one thing you'll notice is I always do this to myself is I like to smell the sauce to see how the aroma is. It helps me get an idea how much other stuff I may want to add to it. Keep in mind when you're working with hot peppers, it kind of burns your lungs after you've processed it like this, but I don't really mind it. It's just it makes me cough. So So let's get the rest of that in there. So notice I'm putting this in a canning jar. All right, so there is the sauce so far. So now what we got to do is put a tight fitting lid on it, and we're going to let it ferment for at least 3 days. Typically 3 days is what I like to do with a lot of my fermented stuff. However, with the pepper, that's the minimal. I'm going to recommend up to a week at least. You can even go 2 weeks. It depends on how fermented you want it. You want to taste it after about 3 days and see what you think. If you want it to get more tartness, then go ahead and let it sit for a longer period of time. Now you can also, again, add vinegar to this and replaces some of that fermentation starter to get more tartness in there if you already want that. Now what I've got here is a peanut butter jar lid, and most of these ones like this will fit on your regular mouth canning jars. I've inserted a regular metal canning lid that's already been used for canning in there so I can get a tight seal on it. And so you'll need to check it daily and even burp it a little bit. I never use the pickling pipes. I know people find those really cool, but if you forget, if it's hard for you to remember, yeah, it's a good idea, but you don't need those. You can just, as long as you set this in a place where you can see it every day, which you should do anyway, because you want to check on it every day. And besides, with your sauce, you want to know what it's going to taste like as it goes along, especially after the 3rd day, and you want to make sure it's fermenting like it should. I let that one sit for probably about 5 days before I was happy with it, and you can go as long as you want. Just keep checking it. And now, as far as your fermentation starter, I don't always think to mention this, and I don't recall because that last fermentation starter video I did is probably a couple years old. But one of the things you want to do is you want to make sure that you refresh it. And if it's a starter that you're using all the time, you don't need to think to feed it outside of that. If you're using it at least once a week and you're keeping it in your fridge in between time, you don't need to feed it, because you feed it when you refresh it. So I just used a bunch of it. So I like to keep it topped off. I'm going to add a little bit of sugar, about a teaspoon or so, to that, because the bacteria that's working in there, the bacteria and the yeast, it's yeast as well, they have to have something to feed on. Okay, I was hoping maybe you could hear that. I didn't know if you could hear the fizzing, but I added that sugar in there. You can tell it's lively, it's fizzing really good. And then I'm going to top it off with my filtered rainwater. I don't recommend using city water, because all your city water is going to have chlorine in it. And then most of it has fluoride if you live in the United States at least. And it's better to avoid the fluoride, but the chlorine in particular will affect your ferment. So do not use city water unless you've dechlorinated it first. So I use filtered rainwater that we collect right here on our property. That way I don't have to worry about the fluoride or the chlorine, and no concern there. I like to shake it up, get that sugar mixed in there, and then I let it sit on the counter for the rest of the day, and let it get up to room temperature just to make sure it's good and alive. And then I will put it back in the refrigerator. And it won't be long before I'm using it again to make something else, like a homemade soda or something like that. And then once your hot sauce is all done, you got it where you want it, just you can either keep it in the mason jar that you've got it fermenting in, or you can recycle an old Tapatio bottle like I have here and use that to store it in, or whatever works for you. So the nice thing about this with the Tapatio or even a Tabasco bottle is you got the top on there that can control how much you're pouring in, so you don't get too much at a time. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed the video and that you learned something new. Thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.